6 winners from 6 races has made for an exceptional start to the Season 7 of Tier 2 in the Formula Racing League. And round 7 brings us to North America, the first sprint race of the season. Welcome along then to the Canadian Grand Prix. 41 Formula One races have been held at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve over the years. The first was won by Villeneuve himself in 1978. Tonight it plays host to not one but 2 races with a full qualifying session, or I should say short qualifying session preceding a short race, and then a 50% Grand Prix, so 12 laps up ahead of the drivers after this 18-minute qualifying session. And then 35 laps in the race. Kaizen claimed victory in Shanghai last week. Who will it be tonight in this amazing championship battle? Let's find out. 15 drivers are with us for the start of the evening in Canada tonight. Daz Parker is the first one to venture out onto the racetrack in the Mercedes. It was a fairly good outing for Mercedes in Canada when they came here. Goodness me, how long ago was it now? Several months. I think it was in July, I want to say, around about then, but either way, might have been earlier. Who knows? Time doesn't really exist anymore, does it? But Lewis Hamilton getting himself on the podium for the Mercedes team that weekend. A run of successive podiums for the Brackley-based team, but the first time since 2013 that they haven't lifted either the Constructors or the Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen's title-winning season last year at least did see some team success for the Silver Arrows, but none in 2022. They'll be looking to change that next year with some new regulations as well coming into force to prevent porpoising. That's the main one anyway, but several alterations coming to the cars. For the 2023 season, it looks like a dry qualifying session. The reason I touch on that is because one of those regulation changes proposed, maybe not for next season, but in future years, is some sort of wheel cover for the rear wheels to prevent spray and prevent a repeat of what we saw in Belgium in 2021, and to an extent in Japan as well, back in October. I remember when that one was. That one hasn't quite evaded my memory yet, but it will do, I'm sure, in the next couple of months. Daz Parker then makes his way up in towards the chicane of turns 7 and 8, or 6 and 7, I should say, and then on the DRS straight with the kink as he makes his way up in towards 8 and 9. And then another kink brings him into the hairpin of turn 10. Quite a few straights on this circuit. You have then got a couple of twisty corners in the middle sector, but generally this circuit is all about straight line speed, and that's the reason it suited Red Bull relatively well earlier on in the year. But we did see Carlos Sainz, of course, had a relatively good chance of winning the race after a late safety car. Verstappen held it off brilliantly well to take the victory. Daz Parker then through the final chicane past the Wall of Champions, takes the shortest possible run to the start-finish line and sets a 1:13.4, which is beaten instantly by Lorenzo, who goes quicker by over a second. A 1:11.7 from the Alpha Tauri driver. He started on pole position in Shanghai last Tuesday evening. Wasn't able to convert his second pole position of the campaign, and there remains to be the case that there are no repeat winners thus far in the 7th season of Tier 2. McKedley has gone into P2 with a 1:12.8, so nobody so far really getting close to Lorenzo's lap time. Here comes Kaizen. He'll get a bit of a slipstream from the Alfa Romeo in front of him, and he crosses the line to go P2, also on a 1:11.7, just a little bit slower than Lorenzo's lap time. Squiddly diddly. Haven't seen him for a couple of rounds, actually, in the Ferrari, as Cavallis goes fastest for Red Bull. 1:11.3 from him, so 4/10 quicker than Lorenzo. Really good lap. Squiddly diddly gets very close to the Wall of Champions. Invalidates the lap time, I think, as he goes over the extremities of the racetrack. But I guess the more important thing there for him is that he hasn't lost any wheel rims or any suspension or anything like that. Still able to keep going in the session. Here comes Becco in the Ferrari. Missed last week. He has just invalidated his lap time for the prancing horses, so he'll have to go again. And he remains the only driver out there then, or one of only 3 drivers out there on a lap at the moment. However, we've had Squiddy Diddley invalidate his lap time, potentially do himself a disservice as well on his bodywork. But Sells has backed out of a lap, as now has Becco. Empajandro in the other AlphaTauri is just coming towards the end of his out lap at the moment, so he'll be setting a lap in the not too distant future for the AlphaTauri team. It really has been a terrific season of racing so far. Empajandro has been a part of that. He's scored points in all of the 5 races he's contested so far in Season 7. Hasn't been on the podium just yet. Certainly has looked as though he's had the pace to do so. He's out-qualified Lorenzo once. That was in round number 5 in Portugal. A little bit of a backwards grid for that one. And we may yet have one today, of course. We do have a sprint race before the 50% Grand Prix. So qualifying here works the same as it does in Formula 1 in real money. It's decided over a 3-part qualifying session. The grid for the sprint race, and then the sprint race dictates the grid for the main event itself. Empajandro with a purple middle sector for AlphaTauri. That's good work from him, but Sells goes into P2 meanwhile for Haas. A really good lap then from him to go on a 1:11.7, but Becco takes fastest on a 1:11.0, so 0.3 quicker than Cavallis's lap. So some real big lap times coming in at the moment. Empajandro gets very close to the wall of champions, as close as he possibly dares to. And across the line he goes, and he puts himself into P6. 1:11.8, just adrift of Kaizen. And that is, 0.8 of a second slower than Becco's lap time. So brilliant run from the Ferrari man. Carlos makes his way up in towards the chicane of 6 and 7, takes a relatively tight line on the entrance to 6, runs it through 7. It's a good exit as he flicks open the DRS rear wing, heading through the kink and up the hill into another uphill braking zone in towards 8 and 9. So easy to lose the rear through either of those curbs. They are a little bit raised, and then he heads in towards turn number 10. A couple of variations of racing lines. Carlos hugs the apex and then lets the car run out towards the wall. Not too much risk going on, thankfully, for Carlos, as he flicks open the rear wing, then on the way down towards the final chicane and the intimidating wall of champions. It's taken out many a driver over the years. Really good run that from Carlos. That's an exceptional run from him. The round number 2 race winner, and he goes up to P7 on a 1:11.9. Jay Hartnell is out there as well, but he's invalidated his lap time. We've got Swinney also out on the racetrack, setting a lap at the moment as he opens his rear wing. Jack Bowie is on an outlap currently for Red Bull. Jack, this season, one of the winners. He won in Abu Dhabi in round number 4. That's one of 3 podiums he's had this season, one of which was in Monaco in the opening round, where he lost out narrowly to Jay Hartnell on the race winners. Swinney lifts himself into 8th position, and Jack Bowie then has begun his first timed lap for the Red Bull team. Potentially a championship contender is Jack Bowie. Quite a few, really, that you could put in that bracket of possibly being in with a shout of the championship this season. And there really aren't all that many that you would bet against at the moment in terms of launching that title challenge. Carlos remains our championship leader from Jack Bowie, 10 points separating them. Kaizen in P3 at the moment, and then Butzel's in 4th position. And it is a surprise, we've had Becco, one of our best qualifiers so far this season. He's 10th in the championship. Lorenzo is in 6th on 100 points, 36 points off the championship lead right now. It does seem to be that there is a bit of a curse on pole sitters so far this season. Jack Bowie up towards the line, and it's P14, 114.5 from him. So I assume, whilst I was rambling and looking at the standings, I probably missed a mistake somewhere from Jack Bowie. I am the ever-observant commentator, presiding over everything you see and everything that I absolutely don't see, which is most of the action that happens over the course of a Tuesday night. Here comes Jay Hartnell on the run in towards turn number 10, and he has set, on the timing screen at least, a purple middle sector. Has Jay Hartnell. His win in Monaco, also one of 3 podiums for him, as he makes his way in towards the final chicane. Jay Hartnell sitting 5th in the championship, just behind his teammate Butsells at the moment. And around the final corner he comes, decides not to take the absolute shortest run to the start-finish line, but goes P3 on a 1:11.2, couple of tenths off Becco. It's a really good lap from Jay Hartnell. So the only one, I think, that we haven't really seen go hell for leather so far is Jack Bowie, but he is nearly 2 seconds up right now on his last lap time. That's a lot better over the first 2 sectors. What about the final one? Jack Bowie, it's P9. It's much more representative, 1.1 seconds away, and that has instantly been beaten by Nivi, who has gone into 7th position on a 1:11.8, just shy of Lorenzo's 1:11.7. And that looks impressive, and it is impressive. That looked even more impressive at the start of the session for Lorenzo, when he did set that lap time. But since then, Becco's gone 7/10 of a second faster than him, or just under. So Lorenzo has some time to make up if he is going to grab his 3rd pole position of the season. Becco's already on 3, and somehow isn't one of our winners so far this season. 5 pole positions between himself and Lorenzo. They are the 2 drivers who have been on pole the most. Kaizen also having taken a pole position earlier on in the season. Lorenzo taking the 2nd of his last week in China, but unable to add his 2nd win of season 7. In towards the final chicane then comes the AlphaTauri driver. Oh, hits the wall of champions on the exit, and that puts pay to that lap. That's so frustrating for him, because it was there. The finish line was right in front of him. So frustrating. Here comes Butsells for Haas. He's backed out of a lap time meanwhile, and Cavolis, Jack Bowie, I should say, has just crossed the line for Red Bull. I think that was, it was a slowdown lap for him. Whether he's going to be on a push lap now, we'll find out, I guess, when he gets to the end of the first sector split, which is just on the way up to the braking zone of turn number 6, and he is up on his previous best, is Jack Bowie. So this is a push lap for him. He is going to try and go for another run. Becco is out there as well currently for Ferrari. And he, I believe, has just made his way through the opening couple of corners of his latest flying lap. Here then comes Jack Bowie down towards turn number 10. No DRS just yet. Purple middle sector for Jack. So a good middle part of the lap this for the Red Bull driver, currently 2nd in the championship. In a battle with Cavolis, but realistically in a battle with a lot of drivers who are going to be putting putting their names in the hat, really, to win the title this season. Good run from Jack Bowie through the final chicane. And what's this going to be for him then as he crosses the start-finish line? It is P6, so 1:11.6 from Jack Bowie. Interesting strategy from him in qualifying. He's decided to put quite a few laps of fuel in the car and go for several consecutive runs. And he's going to try and set his lap times that way. The only potential issue, of course, is tyre wear on his soft compound tyres. But of course you can start the sprint race and then the actual race with whatever tyres you fancy, as per the regulations introduced at the start of this year. Mystery was on a push. He's not pushing though at the moment. Who else is out there? Kaizen has got up to P2 in amongst all of that, and he is on an outlap now for Aston Martin, and he is on a 1:11.0 is Kaizen. So again, me being as ever, decided to not keep an eye on his lap time whilst he was running. Daz Parker is on a lap right now for Mercedes. He's got the red light, flashing on the back of the car, so he is in energy saver mode, and he's not pushing right now. Empehandro's had his lap invalidated, and we've got Nakedli, Carlos Swinney, and Squidley all in the pit lane at the moment. So most of the drivers now, or some of the drivers, are just preparing for those final runs, really, potentially considering another set of tyres. Of course, the tyres you use now do come out of your allocation for the race weekend, as it were, over the sprint and then the race. Of course, you do get more tyres because there's more sessions involved than there usually would be. Usually only 2 sessions that the drivers have to contend with. This time it's 3 for the Canadian Grand Prix sprint race as Nivy makes his way through the first couple of corners for Williams. Pretty good lap first time round. 0.8 of a second off P1 is Nivy. We'll see what he can do in the opening sector of this lap. Traverses the second chicane. Not too sure. Yeah, the run I think through the middle chicane wasn't the best. He is down currently on his previous best lap time as Nivy as he makes his way out of turn 7 and through towards 8 and 9. For the Williams team, I think he's clipped the barrier as well on the entrance to turn number 8. So it's been a bit of a scruffy lap this for Nivy. Probably hasn't quite been as tidy as he wanted it to be. Kaizen has just begun a lap of his own. I think he was on a second warm-up lap on this current set of tyres before he decided to go for it again. Squiddly Diddly is out there currently for Ferrari. He rounds the final corner and across the line for him. And I believe that will be the start then, of a lap time. I think that one was invalidated. It was a 1 minute 12. I don't think that would have actually put him up any higher up the order. But anyway, up then into P4 has gone Cavolis, meanwhile, for Red Bull. Becco and Kaizen both on laps then. Becco is improving in the opening sector of his current lap. Kaizen is a little bit further up the road. He's going through turn number 10 and he is improving right now, and just the slightest improvement, as you can see, because there is 1/100th of a second between the top two. A slight improvement realistically gains you that pole position if you're Becco or Kaizen right now. Kaizen up towards the final chicane then. Goes past the wall of champions. Shortest run to the start-finish line for Kaizen in the Aston Martin. And he takes provisional pole position away from Becco for now. But in the next few moments, Becco will also cross the start-finish line. He hasn't taken the shortest run to the line here for Ferrari. And that might have cost him, because he hasn't gone any quicker than Kaizen. Currently in P1, Cavolis rounds the final corner. He's currently down on his previous best lap time, but does improve in the final sector and moves ahead of Jay Hartnell and into third position. Mystery on a lap as well currently for Alfa Romeo. He's invalidated it. His teammate Swinney he's crossed the start-finish line and he begins his latest lap. Squiddly Diddly has retired from the session because he has crashed. Where's that? That's the second chicane, and I'm not too sure where his car's gone, but I assume he lost it on the exit of turn number 4. If I had to put my money on it, that's probably what happened to him. Either way, a few seconds left then in qualifying, and who have we still got out on the racetrack? Daz Parker's invalidated his lap for Mercedes. Lorenzo's out there, and he's up by 1/10 of a second on his previous best. Mystery is back in the pit lane. Nivy has finished the session. Jack Bowie is currently up as well, meanwhile, for Red Bull. So a few improvements happening at the moment. Becco's back in the pits. Kaizen doesn't need to go again, so he won't. And Lorenzo makes his way then down towards the final chicane. What can Jay Hartnell do before that? His teammate Bud Sells also out on the racetrack, but he cannot improve on 8th position, partly because he invalidated his lap time at the very end. Behind them, Lorenzo is up into P5 for AlphaTauri. Big improvement from him, but Jay Hartnell now towards the line for Haas. Currently P4 and stays P4 as he crosses the line. He can't take that position back away from Cavolis. Jack Bowie, the only one still out there, but he's invalidated his lap time, and so he crosses the line and remains in 8th position for Red Bull. And all of that means, for the second time this season, Aston Martin's Kaizen takes pole position. It is for the sprint race that he will start P1. And the results of that will determine our grid for the 50% Grand Prix. Takes pole from Becco by just over 6/100th of a second. Really tight between those two, but it's Kaizen who takes it. Cavolis in P3 for Red Bull. Jay Hartnell in 4th place for Haas. It's Lorenzo P5 for AlphaTauri. Mystery and Swinney coming in for Alfa Romeo in 6th and 7th. Jack Bowie in P8. Nivy P9, but Sells in P10. Carlos 11th, Daz Parker 12th, and Bahandro P13, Nokedli in 14th, and we have Squidly Diddly 15th, and last ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix sprint race, for which points will be awarded to the top 10. It goes 10th, 10 points for first place, down to 1 point for 10th place. There are no points for the fastest lap of the race, no points for pole position for the sprint race as such, because Kaizen has essentially already collected that point for getting pole in the qualifying session. Officially, pole positions only given out if the driver who starts on pole for the sprint race ends up finishing the sprint race itself in P1. So it's possible, as per the official sporting regulations, that actually we could end up starting a race with no official pole sitter on the grid, which all seems very silly, but Formula One often does, in fairness. So waiting then for the start of this race. Setups for the sprint race will remain in play, so park firmly regulations apply from the very start of qualifying to the very end of the race, and there are no exemptions for a sprint race. So the setups chosen in qualifying are carried over to the sprint race and the race itself as well. There will be no changes to that. But tyre allocation, tyre choices, you're free to do whatever you want for the sprint race and the main race itself. You don't have to start either race on the qualifying tyre, if that makes any sense. So the formation lap is underway. Kaizen gets us going. 12 laps will be ahead of the drivers when this formation lap comes to an end. And it is an interesting dynamic, really, for the drivers to have to contend with. No pit stops in this race. They will experience the race start twice. They'll experience some overtaking spots twice in terms of race trim. Lots of things they'll be doing twice, really, which is going to be fascinating to see what they learn from the first race going into the second race. Everybody's on mediums for the start, apart from Jack Bowie in 8th and Squidly Diddly in 15th position. The mediums, of course, the tyre of choice to get the drivers to the end of the race tonight. We have seen drivers in Formula One go for the softs in sprints. Generally doesn't actually go that well. The softs do tend to wear by the time the sprint race ends, but Jack Bowie and Squidly Diddly evidently confident that their tyres can make it. There's no mandatory pit stops in a sprint race, although if you do have to make a pit stop, of course you are allowed to. It of course does slow you down, doesn't make your race slow, but if you do pick up damage or any punctures or anything like that, then you can of course make your way into the pit lane. But if they can possibly avoid it, the drivers would very much prefer not to do so this evening. Becco hasn't finished a race in first yet. Can he finish the sprint race in P1? Well, who knows? And that's the other interesting thing about sprint race formats, is that you end up with, of course, the sprint race deciding the race, or the starting grid for the race itself. So a poor qualifying doesn't necessarily put you out of sync for the race itself. You do have the sprint to make up the ground that you might have lost in the qualifying session. So we are just waiting then for those final few drivers to take their place on the back of the starting grid, and when that eventually happens, we will be able to get going. So 0 stop predicted, but we'll see what happens over the course of 12 laps. The Canadian Grand Prix sprint race is underway. It's a good start by Kaizen from P1. Good start from Cavalis as well. And he's already ahead of Becco by the time they get into the braking zone of turn 1. Down the inside goes Lorenzo behind them. Jay Hartnell's losing a couple of positions. Swinney manages to get round the outside at turn 2 of the Haas. Good start from Swinney. Mystery's in there as well. Hasn't lost any ground. Hasn't gained any either. Becco, meanwhile, manages to get back ahead of Cavalis. So after a pretty, not a poor getaway, but not a great one compared to Cavalis, he does manage to recover, and he's not too far behind Kaizen either. So Becco has recovered well from losing the position to Cavalis off the start of the race. Squidly Diddly's up to P12 already. Brilliant start from the Ferrari, having begun this race, or this sprint race, in P15. Goes wide though at turn 8. That could potentially be a chance for Carlos, who has lost a few positions off the start of this race. He's also got his teammate Daz Parker for company as they head into turn 10. It's a little bit deep from Impahandro. ahead of Squidly Diddley. That could potentially give him the opportunity. Jack Bowie just ahead of them, with Nibby holding position in P9 off the start of the sprint. As we come towards the end of lap number 1, here comes Squidly. Does he? Side by side with Empajandro, and he does get past him. Is he compromised on the exit? Not really. I think it will still be a pretty good run for him. Empajandro will potentially have a look at getting back down the inside. Thinks better of it. And that is the position then for Squidly Diddley. Meanwhile, Lorenzo and Swinney are going at it as they make their way in towards turns 3 and 4. Swinney round the outside. Brilliant move. Fantastic move from Swinney. Lorenzo's lost momentum through turn 4 as a result of that move. And Mystery will have a look going up into the chicane. Lorenzo's not quite done with Swinney yet as he looks to regain P4. Becco is now a second behind Kaizen. DRS is enabled on lap number 3 as per usual racing conditions. Lorenzo, not the greatest run through 8 and 9. Mystery will try and take advantage. And they've got Jay Hartnell right behind them as well. Mystery's down the inside going into turn 10. Says get out of the way as he gets past Lorenzo, who does cut back underneath him and will have a fairly good run. He'll get the slipstream, won't get DRS just yet. It's not been enabled yet. Down towards the final chicane, but Mystery will go defensive. Lorenzo will think inside or outside. In the end, it's neither. Doesn't quite have the run to get alongside him. Will he be able to do so on the exit? No, he won't. It's a great exit, though, from Jay Hartnell as they make their way down the home straight, and the Haas will get past, but Sells in the other Haas is right behind Lorenzo now, so having gained some positions off the start, the AlphaTauri's starting to fall back again with Butzel's right on his tail. Cavalis is within a second of Becco, he was just a moment ago. Becco still 1 second behind the Aston Martin of Kaizen, so it's been a good start from Kaizen out front, and Becco, having initially lost P2 to Cavalis, has now regained that second position. Carlos gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. Empajandro has fallen down to P15 now for AlphaTauri, so it's not been a good opening couple of laps for him. Jay Hartnell will look to make up some ground on Mystery. Lorenzo hasn't left the Haas alone just yet. Meanwhile, Daz Parker's down the inside of Nokedley going into turn number 10. The Mercedes gets past the Mercedes-powered McLaren in towards the 10th corner off the lap. Not a great start to this race, though, for Mercedes. One of them in P12 in the shape of Daz Parker, and one of them in P14 in Carlos, who, again, is our championship leader. Could be quite detrimental to him this Grand Prix, but Sells does get past Lorenzo in towards turn 1. So Lorenzo now falls down to 8th position with both Haas cars now in front of him. Becco has recovered well on this lap. He is now 7/10 of a second back from Kaizen. And after this, there'll be 8 laps to go of the sprint. He does have DRS on the way in towards 8 and 9. So Becco has really recovered well after a bit of a shaky getaway initially off the line. He is now all of a sudden in with a shout of taking the lead from Kaizen, who thus far has been leading it off the very start of the sprint. Nokedley's come into the pits, meanwhile, for McLaren. So he now is... Kaizen's made a mistake. So Becco gets past him. Kaizen losing it on the exit of turn 10. And Becco streaming past in the Ferrari to take the lead. In the end, it was rather gifted to him by Kaizen. And Cavalis now with the opportunity, potentially, to get himself ahead of the Aston Martin. 3 races and 2 non-finishes so far for Cavalis in the Formula Racing League in Season 7, so he'll look to improve that form as Jay Hartnell gets past Mystery going into turns 1 and 2. Mystery then gets caught on the outside, and Butzel's will have a look at getting past him, but the other has to stay behind for the time being. How much longer, though, will he be behind the Alfa Romeo? He'll try to ensure that it's extended period as they come through 6 and 7. Carlos gets another penalty for Mercedes, but it's not been a good start for him. Nokedley's on a penalty as well, as is Swinney in the lead Alfa Romeo. It's not a great run for Mystery, and that in the end kind of holds Butzel's up. It has been a good run there, though, for Empajandro and the Alfa Darius. He looks to recover some ground that he's lost in the opening exchanges, and there's a bit of contact between Butzel's and Mystery. That slows Butzel's up on the exit of turn 10. And Empehandro now will have a look at trying to get past the Haas. They do both have DRS, which will probably help Butzel's to stay ahead of Empehandro down the back straight as they make their way into the final braking zone of the lap. To the final chicane, Mystery loses the back end slightly on the exit, which brings Butzel's back into play. And as they approach the braking zone of turn 1, Mystery stays ahead for now. Daz Parker side by side with Squidly Diddley through turns 1 and 2, leaves the Ferrari plenty of space on the inside of 2, and then just uses the traction on the outside to power past him and makes his way up into 11th position, just outside the points paying positions for this Grand Prix. Squidly then gets a penalty for leaving the circuit at turns 3 and 4 behind them. Empehandro, who, excuse me, I was calling Lorenzo Empehandro, wasn't I? Smart as always, genius as always, in the commentary box. Meanwhile, Swinney has made a mistake. Where's he lost it? He's spun on the exit of turn 9, and so he's not out the race, but he was in the barrier, and he's now down to P14 is Swinney. So a decent points position has sadly been thrown away by Swinney there, unfortunately for him. And we have got what have we got? We've got a full safety car deployed actually because of that, so he didn't retire from the race. There's no real debris left on the racetrack, but the safety car has been deployed nonetheless, which I would say is a bit of a surprise, but this isn't EA Codemasters F1 game, so you can never be too surprised with what gets thrown at you sometimes. So Becco leads just over halfway through the sprint. Kaizen in P2, Cavolis in 3rd, Jay Hartnell in P4, Mystery in 5th, Butzel's in 6th, with Lorenzo in P7 for AlphaTauri, Jack Bowie in 9th, Daz Parker rounding out the top 10, and Empehandro 11th, Squidly Diddley in P12, and he is in the pits along with Carlos, Swinney and Nokedley, who I imagine now will surely put on a set of the soft compound of tyre. He's serving a penalty before he can have that pit stop. It is indeed softs on the McLaren, leaving us with 5 runners on the softs. It's quick maths there, as I just counted how many drivers were on it. Really impressive. Didn't take me 3 attempts to pass my GCSE maths at all. And you certainly wouldn't know it from that addition. Either way, Becco leads this sprint. So this is a way back now for Kaizen, really. Having lost the lead through a mistake on the exit of turn 10. All of a sudden, this provides an opportunity for him to potentially regain the lead. The safety car is coming in at the end of the next lap, I believe. I would hope. Surely. That's just my optimism talking at that point. I am known for being way too optimistic about safety cars on the Formula 1 game, but hopefully it will come in at the end of the current lap, on lap number 8, giving us a few laps of racing. I've said it a lot before, but what we have seen so much this season, pretty much every time there's been a safety car, another one has followed immediately afterwards, because we just end up with that. It's almost like a Constantina effect after the safety car restart, and drivers end up ploughing into each other, and we get all those issues with more safety cars being deployed immediately afterwards. So we've had a lot of disrupted races this season as a result of that, and it hasn't been ideal, but ultimately we have we've certainly tonight at least had one so far. Hopefully we won't have too many more, either in the sprint or in the 50% race that follows it. And after this race we do just go straight into that sprint race, the grid determined, as I say, off 50% race I should say, and the results of this race determining, as I say, the main race that we'll have this evening at the Canadian Grand Prix at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, initially known as the Circuit Ile Notre Dame, before its name was changed in 1982, just after the tragic passing of the great Gilles Villeneuve, and has been known as that ever since. Gilles, one of the great drivers in Formula One history. Sorely missed, really, his son Jack going on to win the World Championship in 1997, beating Michael Schumacher in the final race of that season. And meanwhile, the safety car, by the way, still out there. I don't really know why, to be very honest. There was a spin for Swinney. Swinney span, and that was it, basically. But for some reason, we've had a 3-lap safety car off the back of that. Don't ask me why. Got absolutely no idea. That's just the logic, unfortunately, that does go into these Formula One games. But hopefully at the end of this lap we will have the safety car back into the pit lane and we can get some racing going again. We'll only have 3 racing laps, provided, there we go, the safety car does come in at the end of this lap. I don't really understand why that had to take so long after a spin. Safety car. It's coming to the pit. I don't know, really, to be honest. Yeah, ours is on a postcard, really, as to that one. I'd love to enlighten you, but I can't. Anyway, right, so Becco leading, and this would be his first win of any kind of the season. As we've mentioned, he has been one of the front runners of the season so far, but sits 10th in the championship because can't seem to win a race this season. But hopefully for him, he'll be able to do so now. Hopefully for Kaizen, from where he's sitting, he'll be able to stop him from doing that. Up towards turns 1 and 2 we go. Nakadli's got a 3-second penalty already off the restart, with Becco then making a brilliant getaway, staying ahead of Kaizen, going into the first 2 corners of the lap. Jay Hartnell just behind Cavallis as he looks to get into the top 3. Not quite the podium places at the moment. They will be the podium places, though, being contested in the 50% race that immediately follows this one. And the DRS straight between turns 7 and 8, with Mystery getting pretty close to Jay Hartnell as well, up towards one of numerous chicanes at this racetrack. Kaizen already 9/10 of a second down on Becco, with Cavallis a further second back from him. So really has been a good restart this from Becco. DRS won't be enabled until the final lap, I believe, of the sprint race, so there won't be many opportunities to get DRS passes done. Mystery will be aware of that, right behind Jay Hartnell. He's got the other half of Butzel's just behind him, so he's the meat in that sandwich, really. Butzel's has had a good run on the exit of the final corner, but thinks better of the late move into turn 1. Takes a slightly different line to Mystery through turn 1, and then they end up kind of taking the same one through turn 2. Butzel's with Lorenzo just behind him. It's been a bit of an up and down race so far for Lorenzo in the AlphaTauri. We are yet to really see Becco make that first championship statement in season 7. Seen him show so much pace. He was one of the front runners in Abu Dhabi before a lack of concentration really led him to go straight into the back of Lorenzo, putting them both out of that race. And there's been a mistake, I think, from Squidly Diddley. Yeah, he's out of the race. Squidly Diddley's crashed in the Ferrari. Oh, and ahead of that, Carlos making a bit of a late lunge into turn 10. Goes wide as a result. He's under pressure from Swinney, but he's still right behind the AlphaTauri of Empajandro as they make their way down towards the final chicane. Squidly Diddley's crash on the way in towards turn 10 hasn't warranted a safety car yet. It's a strange place to lose it, similar to where Robert Kubica lost it all those years ago before his big crash, as Carlos does now get past Empajandro on the way in towards turn 10. Ahead of him is his teammate Dallas Parker, currently occupying the final points paying position. Butzel's has gotten past Mystery. That move's been coming for a couple of laps. And he does get ahead. Lorenzo will be the next one to try and get himself past the Alfa Romeo. Jay Hartnell still has his sights set on the top 3 finish. And Kaizen here is really having a look at the lead on the final lap of this sprint race. Becco's fortune really hasn't been there when it comes to winning races in Season 7. But Kaizen has slightly made a mistake. And I think Kavalis has made a big mistake too. He's lost it in the same place as Swinney did earlier on. And that's put Kavalis all the way down to P14. That's heartbreak for him. He was comfortably running in 3rd place for so much of this race, pretty much the entirety of it. But now, that one mistake's put him outside the top 3, outside the points. Jay Hartnell's in the top 3, and Becco rounds the final corner. It's not a full race win, but it is a sprint race win for Becco as he rounds the final corner and finishes P1. Kaizen in P2. Jay Hartnell crosses the line 3rd, but that will become P4 because of his penalty. Butzel's in P3. Mystery P5. Lorenzo 6. Nivi in 7th. Jack Bowie in 8th. Daz Parker 9th. And Empajandro takes the final point for AlphaTauri in the sprint race. McKedley, Swinney, Carlos and Kavalis behind them. And then Squiddy Diddley out of the race in the Ferrari. Late drama in the sprint race. Kavalis, sadly for him, just making one error, and that was all she wrote for his chances of any points in the sprint. Not to worry entirely. He does still have he does still have the race, of course, to grab some extra points this evening, and for his sake, try to get himself on to into the top 15, which of course he is already in, given we do have the top 15 scoring points, and he did finish this race in P14 tonight. So all is not lost for the Red Bull driver. However, a little bit of a nightmare at the end of it. Could have been starting the sprint in 3rd, the race in 3rd position, but because of that spin in the sprint, he will instead be starting the 50% Grand Prix, which is upcoming in 14th place. So the main race moments away from getting started. We have had over the 41 years of racing 20 victories from pole position, the last of which was by Max Verstappen earlier on in 2022. 9 victories have come from 2nd place where Kaizen starts, and 12 of them from outside of the front row. So we'll see, really. It's a pretty good, just under half, basically, of the races have been won from pole position over the years in Canada. And it is a track where it is relatively, well, not easy, but overtaking is certainly possible around this racetrack. So yeah, we'll see. I think there's a pretty good chance of either the top 2 taking the victory tonight. The grid for the race, not necessarily too far distinct from the grid in the sprint race, with drivers, for the most part, holding position, apart from 1 or 2 here and there. A few mistakes being made over the course of the race, one of which, of course, as we saw, by Kavalis, which really was a shame for him to lose it right at the end. And the majority of the drivers, apart from Mystery and Swinney, will be starting this race on the hard compound tyre. One of the surprises so far really has been Carlos, down in P13 for the start of this one, having finished there in the race. Of course, the championship leader, as we keep harping on about, one of the 6 winners so far in Season 7. So he needs a good race, really. He's going to keep that championship run going. Does sort of need to be a good run off the start. He is, of course, in the points currently as it stands, but Becco with a chance to make his first real championship statement here tonight. He knows what a big haul of points he could potentially be set for if he's able to hold on to P1 this evening. 40 points for the race win, and that's why the swing of championship points could be so vital and so crucial, because He does currently find himself, I don't have to do more maths in a second, 79 points off the Champions League. So he won't take the lead in the championship. But he could really close that gap to Carlos going into the final 8 rounds of the season. Not even halfway through this season yet. So it does go to show that a run of wins for anyone at the moment seriously does put them in with a shot of the title. Haven't had a repeat winner yet in Season 7. Haven't had Beko win a race yet in Season 7. Are we about to get that tonight? Either of those things tonight. Well, Beko will be aiming to put himself on the top step of the podium. The Canadian Grand Prix is underway. It's another pretty good start from Beko. Kaizen from P2. Really good start behind them from the Alfa Romeo of Mystery, who was then, I think, almost been involved in a spin. How's he kept that pointing in the right direction? Budsells and Jay Hartnell side by side with him, and then Mystery darts to the inside of Kaizen. What a start by Mystery! Incredible getaway from the Alfa Romeo, all the way up to P2 at the start of this Grand Prix. It's almost like he was playing Mario Kart in the opening couple of corners. He flies past everyone and up into P2. Beko, the only one in front of him off the start of this Grand Prix. Fantastic getaway from Mystery. Kaizen didn't make a bad start at all, really. He just had an Alfa Romeo coming out of nowhere to take his position away. Swinny's made a great start as well in the other Alfa Romeo. He's up to P7 on the medium compound tyres. Of course, we do have a mandatory pit stop in this race, unlike the sprint. And as we get towards the end of lap 1, Beko leads Mystery by over a second. Fantastic start from the Ferrari. Fantastic start from the Alfa Romeo. What can Kaizen do in response to that? Well, he's under pressure from both Haas cars right now. Budsells and Jay Hartnell are on his tail as they come to the final corner, and we've got Swinny and Nakedley going side by side on the exit as they head down towards turn number 1. Swinny down the inside. Lorenzo's just in front. Swinny's move on Nakedley takes him into Lorenzo. Thankfully, no serious contact that massively affects their races. Nakedley is still wanting to go side by side with Swinny here in towards turn 3, but Swinny braves it on the outside, gets the move done on the McLaren, and thankfully Lorenzo and Swinny's contact didn't result in anything more severe than that. But Sells had a poor run on the exit of turn 7. Here comes Lorenzo down the inside going into turn 8. There's more contact going on. Off the track goes Budsells. Lorenzo goes to the outside and gets the position. Budsells isn't done just there, although he's been passed now by Swinny going in towards turn 10. And we have a... what do we have? Is that a safety car? A virtual safety car. Looks like a virtual safety car has been deployed after numerous bits of contact that has also seen Carlos come into the pits for Mercedes. And so that will all just calm things down a little bit after an epic start to this race. Mystery, what a start it was. Diving down the inside. I thought for sure he was about to spin when he dived down the inside into turn 1. Then out of absolutely nowhere, got an incredible exit out of turn 2. And somehow kept the car pointing in the right direction as he got past Kaizen and into second place. That has got to go down as one of the best starts of the season so far. And he then is back up and running, as is Kaizen after the virtual safety car. Kaizen is 0.3 of a second back from the Alfa Romeo. Mystery this season has been on the podium twice. 2 of his 4 points finishes thus far in 6 races. Kaizen looking to take second place away from him. Jay Hartnell's not too far behind either. So Mystery might have a battle on his hands to keep hold of a podium position tonight. 2.5 seconds now between Beko and Mystery in P2. So I think Kaizen's very aware right now that he needs to get this job done pretty quickly to stay in touch with Beko. And he's going to try and do that now. Down the inside into the final chicane. Good move by Kaizen. Mystery might try and come back at him though as they make their way down towards turn 1. Kaizen has DRS. Mystery doesn't. And Kaizen stays in front. But Sells with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix for Haas meanwhile. just behind Swinney. Cavolis now takes the fastest lap in the Red Bull. Up to P11 from 14th for him. Oh, he spins! And he has to just about put the brakes on and keep it pointing in the right direction, does Cavolis. You'd rather feel as though a little bit of confidence has been knocked as a result of that spin at the end of the sprint race for Cavolis. But no, he can keep that belief, maintain that belief in himself. Certainly did have the pace on merit to finish in the top 3 in the sprint race, did Cavolis. Let's see what he can do for the remainder of this race this evening. Jay Hartnell then on the exit of turn 10 onto the DRS straight, chasing down Mystery for P3. It's not been a bad start at all, has it really, for Alfa Romeo? Mystery up to P5, Swinney Swinney up to P5, Mystery running in the podium places. Meanwhile, we've got the Haas of Butzells having a look here at Lorenzo into turn 1. Swinney's just got ahead of the Alpha Tauri. Butzells will try and hang around the outside of turn 2, get some pretty good traction, and Lorenzo can't fight it going into turn 3. Butzells gets ahead, Lorenzo back down to P7, and Butzells following Swinney through. That's important for him if he wants to get himself into the top 5 as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Jay Hartnell is right behind Mystery, who has now fallen 1.6 seconds behind Kaizen. He is 3.4 adrift of Becco, our race leader at the moment. So we'll see if that gap comes down. It has just reduced by a couple of tenths in the time I've been looking at that gap. So assuming it's going pretty well, that progress at the moment for Kaizen on this opening stint. They're both on hard tyres, as is Jay Hartnell as he tries to chase down Mystery. Empajandro is up to P9, having just passed Daz Parker because Daz has made a mistake at turn 10. So the Mercedes having to spin himself back around, and that puts Cavolis into the top 10 for Red Bull. So it's been a decent recovery so far for Cavolis, save for one error on the exit of turn 2, and down the inside goes Jay Hartnell. A Mystery who fights it as hard as he possibly can, stays down the inside going into turn 2, but cannot stay ahead of the Haas. He's got his teammate for company now, Swinney, who is also on the medium tyres just behind his teammates. The Mystery, having made that emphatic start, is now outside of the podium places, and he's at risk as well from Swinney and Butzells, and potentially Lorenzo too. Lorenzo has now fallen outside of DRS range of Butzells. Mystery staying in touch with Jay Hartnell. He'll be aware that Swinney is right behind him as they head down towards turn number 1 and towards the bottom of the order. Squiddly Diddley's made a mistake. Where's that? That's on the... where is that? Oh, either way, he's spinning around quite a lot. It's on the exit of turn... I've no idea, but he's just lost his front wing. Has Squiddly Diddley smashing the car into the barrier. I've still got no idea where that is. It's either way, the full safety car's been deployed. It's on the exit of turn 1, and he spins again because the tyres are just so hot at this point, because he's been spinning around quite a lot. Has Squiddly Diddley not the proudest few moments for him, and we already have our first safety car of the Canadian Grand Prix this evening. Jack Bowie has taken the opportunity to pit for Red Bull. It's a fresh set of medium tyres on the car for him. Surprised, actually, that nobody else has taken that opportunity. Nivi is on his way down towards the final chicane now for Williams. Does he pit? No, he doesn't. And we've got Nakedli, Carlos. Carlos does pit for Mercedes, so he's going to get rid of his medium tyres. He did pit earlier on in the race, and it's hard tyres on for him. So does he potentially feel that those tyres can make it then to the end of the race? Jack Bowie took on a fresh set of mediums, so kind of symbolised that he didn't feel that the mediums could make it, or the hards could make it. I should say the mediums certainly can't make it. The hards potentially. We'll see. We'll see how far they can go. He will need to deploy some Sergio Perez-like tactics to keep hold of those tyres. Put them in the fridge, put them in some vinegar, some salt, some sugar, or I don't know, whatever ingredients you would use to preserve your food. I don't know why you put it in vinegar, to be fair, apart from like a pickled onion or something, or I don't know. Pickled onion's actually any good. I've never tried a pickled onion before. Either way, into the pits has come Mystery for Alfa Romeo. It is somewhat of a mystery that I've never actually had a pickled onion, actually, in my life. I've had Monster Munch, but it doesn't really count, does it? A change of front wing for Mystery. And away he goes on the hard tires. Good evening to Liverpool fan, by the way. Missed that earlier in the chat, but thanks very much for joining us. Unable to make it to the race this evening, unfortunately, the Alpine driver. So too his teammate Pimis. Shame for them, really. A joined 7 points finishes so far this season for the Alpine team. Behind Mercedes and Alfa Romeo on that front. They both have 9 between them. 8 between Lorenzo and then Alejandro. So too for the Haas pair of Jay and Butzells. And 7 for the Williams pairing of Nivi and Matty G. So one of the high scoring teams are Alpine this season. Some relatively low ones actually are Ferrari, would you believe? Becco and Squiddly with 5 between them. 5 for McLaren as well. Knock Headley picking up all 5-point finishes so far for the team from Woking. So hasn't necessarily been the greatest season for them so far. And Squiddy Diddley's been disqualified from the session. So that is him out of the race. Sorry, disqualified. He has retired from the session, I should say, in the pits. After that mistake, and then the subsequent mistakes that followed. Oh, and one of the Haas is in the background. I believe it is Butzells. Yeah, he's just lost his front wing. That might have been on the back of Swinney that he just made contact. Either way, that's a bizarre incident for Butzells, and that is going to put him down to the back of the order, having just lost the entirety of his front wing as the race was about to get underway. Becco has got going. It's been a good restart for him. Kaizen already 9/10 of a second back after the first couple of corners of lap number 9. Jay Hartnell looking to take P2 away from Kaizen in the next few laps. 8/10 of a second back from him. But Butzells, what a bizarre incident that was for the Haas driver. He's got a new front wing on the car. Fresh mediums now attached. But yeah, nightmare for Butzells. He was certainly looking for a podium place this evening, but that has been put in jeopardy by that incident. Here, meanwhile, comes Swinney down towards turn 10 for Alfa Romeo, looking to take on Jay Hartnell for that final podium position. And down the back straight they come then. No DRS just yet because of the fact that we've only just come out of a safety car period, so it will be enabled on lap number 11. I want to say when that will be enabled. Here comes Swinney then, down towards turn 1. Can he get himself ahead of Jay Hartnell? No, he can't. And behind them, Daz Parker's made a mistake for Mercedes. That is at the final chicane, so I think he's made contact with the Wall of Champions somewhere. Somewhere along the Wall of Champions. There's not that much of the Wall of Champions to make contact with, in fairness, but when you consider the proportion to the rest of the racetrack, I mean. But anyway, he has made contact with the Wall of Champions and spun as a result. Butzells is still about 10 seconds behind him after his pit stop as a result of his contact that led to him losing his front wing just as the race was about to restart. Jay Hartnell defending again from Swinney, or preparing to defend from Swinney. Jay has fallen nearly 2 seconds behind Kaizen. Kaizen is just outside of DRS range to Becco in front of him. Swinney could have a real chance here of getting ahead of the Haas. No DRS, as I say. However, there will be DRS when they cross the start-finish line to begin lap number 11. Jack Bowie gets past his teammate Cavallis, having made a pit stop under that safety car. So Jack Bowie's going to be flying now, I think, for the next few laps of this Canadian Grand Prix. Crosses the start-finish line and sets after Empajandro in the AlphaTauri, who himself is just behind his teammate Lorenzo. So Jack Bowie's got a few positions he can try and rattle off here. in his bid to, who knows, potentially get a podium of his own this evening. 8 podium finishes so far in season 7. Oh, Kaizen spun. Kaizen's gone for a spin on the exit of turn 7, and that has put him all the way down the order. It'll put him behind Kedley, so it'll be P12 for Kaizen. That's a really costly mistake. He's lost 10 positions as a result of that, and it now gives Becca a 3-second lead almost over Jay Hartnell, who is still under pressure here from Swinney. 0.4 of a second back. The Alfa Romeo will have DRS now down the back straight as he flicks open that rear wing. He's just a bit too far back, I would wager, to have a go just yet. Meanwhile, Empehandler and Jack Bowie are going at it. The Red Bull trying to get past the AlphaTauri. He does have DRS, has the advantage, although look at that from Empehandler. He's got fantastic straight line speed. Stays with Jack Bowie for most of the straight, but then he's compromised through the final chicane as Jack Bowie gets down the inside, and Kavalis has a chance as a result to get past him, and does. And Nivi as well is under pressure from Mystery. Who does he get in front? Yes, he does. Carlos now with the chance for Mercedes to try and cut back underneath, but can't quite get past the Williams just yet. Kedley in P11 challenging as well behind him. And Jack Bowie now has himself 1.3 seconds behind Lorenzo. So he really is on the charge here. On his fresh rubber is Jack Bowie. Swinney remains just behind Jay Hartnell. He's getting good exits at the moment, is Jay. Swinney is on medium tyres as well, so you'd expect him to be quicker. You'd expect him to be putting Jay Hartnell under lots of pressure. Potentially, you'd expect him to have passed by now. Oh, Butzells is out of the session. And that is going to be a safety car. And that's what I said again about safety cars breeding safety cars. You get one, and then another follows almost immediately afterwards. I don't know exactly what has happened to Butzells there. Yeah, tough to pinpoint what's happened there because I can't see his car anywhere at turn 10 or anything like that. But yeah, strange one. But he is out of this race, is Butzells. So no further participation from him in this race. We've got 13 runners left in the race from 15. Swinney, Kavalis, Empehandler, Kaizen and Daz Parker have all pitted. Becco, Jay Hartnell, Lorenzo, Jack Bowie, Mystery, Nivi and Carlos have all stayed out on the racetrack after or during this safety car period. So Jack Bowie's tyre advantage is essentially gone compared to a lot of the field because of the fact that they've just pitted. It's still there relative to Becco, Jay Hartnell and Lorenzo, who you probably still feel have the advantage overall in terms of tyres because they are still on hards and they can still run these tyres to a very, very late point in Grand Prix, potentially even utilising softs at the end, because the more you get now, the less tyre life is being taken away from their hards. And if you go to the form book this season, as I say, we never really seem to have one safety car at a time in this league racing season. It's always safety car after safety car after safety car. And so when you take that logic into account, you end up with a really good opportunity to elongate the life of your hard tyres and therefore take them so much longer into the Grand Prix. And the more safety cars there are, the less you're pushing and the more you're saving that tyre life. So that might be a factor for the hard tyre runners. It is hards and mediums being deployed at the moment, but don't be too surprised, I would say, if you see a few softs being put on the cars at the end of this 35-lap race. 14 laps into it, and the second safety car of the Canadian Grand Prix has been deployed. Rebecca leads for Ferrari. They have won 11 races at the Canadian Grand Prix over the years, the last of which was Sebastian Vettel in 2018. He will probably still argue that it should be 12 for Ferrari, and his last one should be 2019 after the controversial penalty was given to him. And I think that's still a debate, in fairness, to this day. That gets debated, that he should have won that race and not Lewis Hamilton. And the famous scenes after the Grand Prix had to be talked into the podium celebrations by his Ferrari team. Swapped, of course, the boards over in Park Road, put the number 1 board in front of his car, in front of where his car should have been. He actually parked his car at the end of the pit lane and then walked over to park firmly after that, having stormed off to the Ferrari hospitality area. So, yeah, very interesting Canadian Grand Prix that was. And, of course, then it would be another 3 years before Canada popped up on the calendar once more due to the COVID-19 pandemic that struck so many people around the world, pretty much everybody around the world. Certainly struck sport, certainly struck Formula One as well. But we're so happy to see it back on the calendar this season. It did give us a rather interesting race and certainly an enthralling end to it. And the safety car is in at the end of this lap. So, let's see if Becco, well, he chooses more or less the same place to go for it as he did. Oh, Lorenzo has crashed already. Lorenzo's in the wall of champions, and that is him out of the Canadian Grand Prix. The AlphaTauri driver crashing into the barrier immediately after the restart, slewing back across the racetrack and out of the Canadian Grand Prix. It's a huge moment that for Lorenzo. It's his 4th non-finish of the season, now outweighing the amount of times he's finishing the points in Season 7. And that has not caused another safety car, which I'm quite surprised about, to be honest. But anyway, there you go again. Logic from EA and Codemasters. And Lorenzo out of this race. His teammate Empajandro gets ahead of Cavolis heading into turn 8. Cavolis then runs wide, and that could be a chance for Kaizen to swoop back underneath him and get past him. Daz Parker's looking interested in the Mercedes as well. Cavolis defends the inside. Kaizen forced to go the long way around. And can he do so? Cavolis leaves him room on the exit. And Kaizen, I think, will get in front of the Red Bull. However, Cavolis now in the slipstream of the Aston Martin as they head back down towards the final chicane. Does he get in front? No, he doesn't. And Kaizen consolidates that position. And up into P10 he goes. So Cavolis losing 2 positions in the space of a few corners. Daz Parker makes it another one because he gets past into turn 1 and takes 11th position away from the Red Bull driver, who is now last of the current runners. Swinney gets a penalty for multiple warnings, currently running in 7th position. Mystery's up to 4th, having lost his podium place. Of course, we have had some pit stops that have altered the order slightly. Becco leading from Jay Hartnell, 1.5 seconds separating them. Jack Bowie is on 9-lap old mediums compared to 15-lap old hards on Jay Hartnell ahead of him. So he certainly is looking for P2 right now, potentially bring himself into play later on in the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Nokedli, Empajandro and Kaizen, going at it, and there's contact between Empajandro and Kaizen and Nokedli, all of them going off the racetrack. Nokedli's down to P12, Empajandro 11th, and Kaizen running in P10. That is a really strange moment between those 3 drivers. It all got very, very convoluted indeed going into turn 10, and that is a massive, it's a lot of lost ground, especially for Nokedli. You have to do a 3-point turn at the end of the runoff strip on the exit of turn 10, so nightmare moment for all of them. Nokedli's in the pits after that, and it looked innocuous really going into the corner, but then it all of a sudden turned into anything but, and all 3 of them losing ground in their own ways. It was a little bit of a circus going on there, but either way, Swinney now is right behind Carlos in a battle for P6. They've got Nivi just in front of them. Swinney had got a good run through turn 7, but he's unable to make the most of it going into turn 8 because the Mercedes recovered ground on the exit of 7. Here comes Swinney though going in towards turn 10. Does he think about the move? Not quite. And it is getting a little bit darker over the racetrack as well. A few more clouds starting to appear. Does that potentially symbolise any rain coming at the end of this race? Well, we'll find that out. Carlos now is side by side with Nivi heading into the final chicane. Does he get past? Yes, he does. Good move from the Mercedes. Here comes Swinney now on the exit, looking to put another position over Nivi. And does he manage to get that move done down the inside into turn 1? Nivi doesn't really fight it that hard. And Swinney is ahead on his fresher hard tyres going into turn 2. So up to P6 he goes. Meanwhile, Jack Bowie is just behind Jay Hartnell. Mystery has done pretty well, actually, to stay with that little battle going on ahead of him. Jay Hartnell 2.5 seconds back from Becco. So he hasn't lost an unbelievable amount of ground to the Ferrari at the moment. In towards 8 and 9 we go, with Jack Bowie all over the back now of the Haas. He will have DRS down the back straight. Carlos gets a penalty for multiple warnings in the Mercedes, currently running in 5th position under pressure from Swinney, who is also carrying a penalty at the moment. And then Nivy behind, and he's got Cavalis for company in the Red Bull. Jack Bowie won't quite be close enough just yet to go for the move on Jay Hartnell, and Cavalis certainly is close enough to go for the move on Nivy down towards the final chicane, and the Red Bull then up into 7th position. Started 14th after that spin at the end of the sprint race, but now making his way back up through the order as Daz Parker gets past Nivy and Jack Bowie gets past Jay Hartnell down the home straight. So the Red Bull up into 2nd place, 3 seconds now between himself and race leader Becco, who is still on hard tyres. And behind them, Carlos is now catching Mystery. So Mystery's been caught by this battle between Carlos and Swinney. So this will be an interesting 3-way fight now, really. Meanwhile, Nivy has lost a position because he's had a spin at turns 6 and 7. And that will put him under a little bit of pressure, maybe, from Impejandro. He's recovered really reasonably well, though, to keep himself in front. Daz Parker, 0.4 of a second back from Cavalis, having made his way past Nivy. It is getting quite dark now, isn't it, over the racetrack? I think there's a real chance of rain soon. It really is getting quite badly overcast over this racetrack at the moment. So rain could well be imminent in Montreal this evening. Here comes Swinney then on the exit of the final chicane, side by side with Carlos down towards turn 1. Does he brave it into the braking zone? He does. Carlos leaves him plenty of room, both in turns 1 and turn 2, and then Swinney just has the traction on the outside of turn 2, and he gets ahead of Carlos. Cavalis the next one to try and get involved in that battle. Swinney is still within DRS range as well of Mystery after getting that move done. Becco actually has had some pretty good, he's had a pretty good lap. He's 3.2 seconds ahead of Jack Bowie now, so I just wonder if those medium tyres have started to fall off a little bit for Jack, because he's losing some time to Becco, and I think he's also losing a little bit of time to Jay Hartnell behind as well. Still not too sure if any rain has started to fall over the racetrack. Had a wet qualifying in, where was it? In Canada. Where was it? In Canada, Rob. Earlier this season, as Cavalis gets past Carlos in towards the final chicane. Here comes Swinney now trying to get past Mystery down the home straight. Fernando Alonso, of course, taking his, I think it's 2nd place, first top 3 start since Germany 2012 it was on that occasion. And through turns 1 and 2 then go the 2 Alfa Romeos side by side with each other, Swinney and Mystery in towards turn 3. Mystery stays in front for now, and it has started to rain because onto the intermediates has gone Kaizen and Nivy as well. So the rain started to fall, and we've had 2 drivers already switching on to the inters. Here comes Swinney then, once again having a look at his teammate, and he's got the inside line going in towards turn number 8. Mystery slightly giving him the squeeze with Cavalis just behind now for Red Bull. I'm not really seeing that much rain though falling on the racetrack right now, so is that a premature call to go on to the intermediates for Nivy and Kaizen? I guess we'll find out. Meanwhile, Carlos has been passed by Cavalis, who is right behind, isn't he? Look at this, right behind this battle. And he's down the inside of Swinney going into the final chicane, and he gets past Swinney. There is definitely rain, but I just don't know that there's enough of it to warrant the intermediate tyres. I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised by how early that move is. In towards turns 1 and 2 we go, with Cavalis in the middle of the 2 Alfa Romeos. Mystery's done well to hold on to P4, but can he now held it from the Red Bull. 3 and 4 we go. In towards the kink of turn 5. Both Mercedes now on the back of this battle. Carlos and Daz Parker. And a little bit wide has gone Swinney. Is that the chance for Carlos to make a move heading in towards turn 8? Probably not at this stage. Nope, not quite. Daz Parker is dancing all over the back of his teammate as well. Just behind. As the rain, well, it's not really increasing intensity. Meanwhile, ahead of them, Jay Hartnell's having a go back at Jack Bowie. So I think Jack's tyres are now really struggling for grip because Jay Hartnell has retaken that position. They're now about 5 seconds behind Becco. And I think this was the reason that a lot of the drivers took hard tyres at the start of this Grand Prix, because they were aware that they needed to take these tyres longer into the race, where eventually they would be faced with intermediate conditions. Meanwhile, Cavallis has now gotten past Mystery for 4th position. Daz Parker clears his teammate Carlos for 7th place in this Canadian Grand Prix. So a change in positions between the two Mercedes drivers as well. And in terms of Mystery and Swinney, they are left battling each other once again as they head up through turn 5. Yeah, Nivi's losing time, isn't he, to Empajandro. So it was too early, that move for intermediates. I thought it wasn't wet enough, and indeed it wasn't. Swinney now looking to make this move on Mystery up towards turns 8 and 9. Mystery doesn't need to go defensive just yet. There's almost contact. Off the track goes Mystery at turn number 9. Carlos gets a penalty just behind them. And does Swinney now have the chance to get past him? Carlos is looking interested. Swinney isn't going to go for the move just yet, although Mystery runs wide going through turn 10. And that allows Swinney to go down the inside. But, oh, they're still side by side. Into the wall goes Swinney. He's lost his front wing as a result. And he will have to get that changed. And the safety car has been deployed. Oh, well, rule number 1, don't hit your teammate. We've seen that broken twice in the last 4 races, with the 2 Alpine drivers coming together in Abu Dhabi, and now the 2 Alfa Romeos making contact in Canada. Intermediate tyres are ready for Jay Hartnell, and Becco has stayed out on the racetrack. So was that safety car deployed after Becco had already passed the pit entrance? I wonder if it was, you know. Oh, goodness me, just every single time it looks as though Becco might be about to get that first win, something happens, and it all of a sudden looks as though he might be denied that all over again. We'll see, but I mean, it's pretty much certain now. Jay Hartnell is coming up towards turns 6 and 7. Becco is behind the safety car coming through turns 8 and 9, so a pit stop now for Becco. It puts him out of the lead. It's him behind Jay Hartnell. Who knows how far down the order it would realistically put him, but quite far, I would suggest. So that's a nightmare for Becco. Unless he feels as though the track is still okay to remain on slicks, but you can see it's getting wetter. You can see to pound the racetrack, and Becco will be pleading with the safety car to go quicker, but it's not going to happen, and he will lose the lead here, Becco, when he has to come into the pits to switch on to the intermediate tyres. So in he comes. This will be painful for him. It will be painful for Ferrari. It will be painful for his championship aspirations again, and things just keep going wrong for Becco. Bad luck just continues to befall this man, who has done nothing wrong tonight. He really hasn't put a foot wrong, and yet this race win is going to be taken away from him by this safety car, unless he can power back through the field and recover P1. He will rejoin in 8th place, just ahead of the Alfa Romeo in Swinney. So 7 positions to make up for Becco when this race resumes. But yeah, nightmare. Real nightmare for Becco this evening. But Jay Hartnell leads as a result of that, and we've now have 2 drivers who have both won races this season in P1 and P2. So are we set for our first repeat winner of Season 7? Mystery has a penalty behind them. Empajandro is the next driver behind Jack Bowe, who doesn't have a penalty. And then Becco as well. So a podium is still on the cards for Becco here, provided he keeps his nose out of trouble, penalty-wise. Is the win still possible? Well, we've got 10 laps to go after this. The safety car, I don't think, will disperse just yet. I think it will remain out for at least one more lap. And of course, the question still remains is, are we going to have intermediate conditions between now and the end of the race? You would think so, because the track is now very wet indeed. There's been a fair bit of water fall down onto it. Not quite as much as there has been in the UK in the last couple of days. We went a good 4 or 5 days without any rain over here, so, you know, it's only right that we get bucket loads of it now. It's been a real lack of it in what is a very rainy country recently. Right, so we will have the safety car until at least the end of lap number 26 in Montreal. This race took a year out in 2009, returned in 2010. In that time, seven races have been won from pole position since the return in 2010, and 2 apiece from second and outside of the front row. Mercedes Power's won 4 races here since 2010. Ferrari Power winning 1. That was through Sebastian Vettel's success in 2018. And Renault Power claiming 1 success at this racetrack since 2010. That was Sebastian Vettel's Grand Prix victory in 2013. The Canadian Grand Prix of 2010 was the scene of the penultimate British 1-2 and the penultimate McLaren 1-2 as well. With McLaren taking the 1-2 at the Italian Grand Prix of 2010, and then of course George Russell leading home Lewis Hamilton in Brazil in the penultimate round of the 2022 season to claim a 1-2 for Mercedes in what was a wretched season for them other than that. But that one, a really proud moment for the Silver Arrows. Right then, we are very close to getting back underway. The safety car is peeling back into the pit lane, and Jay Hartnell has gone for it. He's already sent it before he gets to the braking zone of the final chicane, and he's judged that to perfection as Jay Hartnell. That's a brilliant restart. Absolutely outstanding from him. Meanwhile, Daz Parker is he almost had a run on Mystery. I thought he did, and then all of a sudden he didn't. Meanwhile, Carlos having a go at Cavalis going in towards turn 1. Cavalis running deep through 1, going in towards turn 2. And Alejandro now having a look. He's the only sole remaining AlphaTauri left in this Grand Prix. Carlos trying to go round the outside of Cavalis at turn 3. Has to stay behind him for the time being. Cavalis then holding on to P5. And meanwhile, Becco is actually under pressure from Swinney off the restart. So he's not made up any ground off the restart so far, has Becco. Alejandro just ahead of him, but he's got Swinney right behind him, looking to take 8th place away from him, but he keeps ahead of him for the time being. Mystery then up into P3 as a result of all of that. Daz Parker in P4, but Mystery's putting a lot of pressure on Jack Bowie at the moment for 2nd place. He does have a penalty at the Mystery, but potentially, if he can avoid picking up any more, and if he can get himself 3 seconds ahead of the Red Bull, might not matter all that much. Here we go then, in towards the final chicane. He has to stay behind for the time being as he tried to go around the outside of the final chicane. Jack Bowie stayed in front. Mystery loses a bit of ground as a result. Daz Parker has 6 seconds of penalties, as does Carlos in the other Mercedes. And meanwhile, Cavalis and Carlos are again going at it through turns 1 and 2. Becco's managed to get past Alejandro just behind them. Cavalis is still down the inside, but now Carlos gets in front round the outside of turn 3. Good move from the Mercedes man, and he is up then into 5th position. Swinney now getting past Alejandro on the way up towards turn 6 and misses the apex as he gives the AlphaTauri some room, but he does get that move done, and up into 8th place he goes. So Becco climbing to 7th on this lap. Now he's just behind Cavalis as he looks to take 6th place away from the Red Bull, who has just lost P5 to the Mercedes of Carlos. Jack Bowie still holding on to P2 from Mystery. Behind them, Kaizen, who made that mistake early on in the race to lose P2, is now side by side with Embajandro, who gets back ahead of the Aston Martin, running down towards the final chicane. Kaizen really wants to get this move done, wants to climb back up the order, having lost so many positions earlier on, but he gets a penalty now for exceeding track limits at the final chicane. He's had a good run though on the AlphaTauri, and down towards turn 1 we go. No, can't get past. Embajandro stays in front. Meanwhile, Becco still has Swinney for company behind him, looking to catch up to the Red Bull of Carvallis. So he certainly is in with a shout of a podium finish here. Here's Becco. Swinney behind does have 6 seconds of penalties. Carvallis with 3 in front of him. So, yeah, he does have a really good shot here at top 3. Oh, and a bit of a slide for Swinney on the exit of turn number 7. Does really well to hold it. Becco now is all over the back of Carvallis through turn 9. And is he going to have the run going in towards 10? The Ferrari driver. Carvallis staying in front for now. He's had a good run actually on the exit of 9. Has Carvallis. And that keeps him ahead of Becco. But for how long? On the exit of 10 we go. Heading down the back straight. There is no DRS, of course, because we are now in a wet race, a wet part of this Canadian Grand Prix. And Becco won't get past Carvallis yet, going into the final chicane. Jack Bowie is 3 seconds behind. And Becco, I think, has made a mistake at the final chicane. Yes, he has, because Swinney's got past him down the home straight. Becco back down the inside, makes contact, and that slows him down as a result. Thankfully, no spins happening as a result of that. And, well, almost a few tears there as Becco tried to regain P7 from Swinney. So, and he's still giving it a go as Becco. I think part of this is probably frustration now from him as he looks to make his way back at the order, having lost the lead through no fault of his own under the safety car. Mystery, meanwhile, does get past Jack Bowie. So up into second place goes the Alfa Romeo. He's been threatening that for a few laps. Now what he has to do is get a 3-second advantage over the Red Bull, and he'll keep second place. He's almost guaranteed a podium now, provided he doesn't throw it away, because of the fact that Das Parker behind and Carlos both have 6 seconds worth of penalties. So, yeah, I think a top 3 is pretty nailed on here for Mystery. And with 6 laps to go of this race, Jay Hartnell, or 5 laps to go I should say, Jay Hartnell looks as though he's about to become the first repeat winner of Season 7, which really would be a massive moment in this season. And it would put him onto 140 points as it stands. Depends partly on what the fastest lap is. And that fastest lap actually is still, would you believe it, held by Butzel's. And so that doesn't really matter so much. But meanwhile, further down the order, Swinney and Carvallis going side by side. And Swinney does get past the Red Bull. Becco is going to have a look as well now at getting ahead of him. Can he take P7? No, he can't. It will be frustrating for Becco. He's been looking at the back of that Red Bull more than he would have liked in the last few laps. And unfortunately, yeah, it does look for his sake as though that race winner's gone. Oh, Kaizen! Massive move! Out of nowhere comes the Aston Martin, and he'll lose places as a result of that. And he rejoins in P8. Meanwhile, Becco has passed Embajandro. So I think Embajandro got caught out by Swinney's almost ridiculous move down the inside. And Becco now... Oh, he's got a penalty. Has Becco. That will not help his mood at all. Embajandro now with the run on the Ferrari down towards turn number 1. But Becco stays in front. And so he keeps P7. Doesn't get P6, and he has a penalty now, which kind of, well, it negates that advantage that he had over those ahead of him. Jack Bowie also gets a penalty, so that does change the complexion of the battle for second place, because he has now fallen over a second back from Mystery. and so we'll have to finish ahead of the Alfa Romeo on track if he is to take second place in this Canadian Grand Prix. Jay Hartnell 4 seconds in the lead of this race for Haas. Mystery, the only one in the top 3 yet to win a Grand Prix. Daz Parker hasn't won one either this season. Carlos has, Swinney has not, and Beko's run is going to continue. Meanwhile, Kaizen and Nokedli are battling over P9. Nokedli, does he think about the move down the inside of the turn 10? I think he was thinking about it, and Kaizen's run a bit deep, and now Nokedli is going to have the run. No, he's not, because he's got to back out through the kink, but now he is going to switch to the other side, and he will get past Kaizen down towards the final chicane. I do wonder if Kaizen might be in a bit of trouble as well for his move. Oh, into turn 10, and he comes into the pits as well, does Kaizen. I just wonder if he might be in trouble for that late move, because I think Alejandro was really... he lost a lot of time as a result of that in the Alpha Tauri. And Beko still P7. He's now 1.4 seconds behind Swinney in a race that, sadly for him, just continues to get worse and worse and worse as Swinney gets a penalty in front of him. And that's now, I think, 9 seconds of penalties for Swinney, who is on the back of this battle involving Carlos, Daz Parker and Jack Bowie at the front of it now. He's 1.5 seconds behind Mystery, who looks to have second place potentially in the bag. Never want to speak too soon on this game. Jay Hartnell still in P1. And down then in towards the back straight goes the Haas. He's got 2 laps to complete after this one. Oh, and Daz Parker's made a mistake. Yeah, he has. And that's on the exit of turn 10, going on to the back straight. And that has actually allowed Beko to gain not 1 but 2 positions, because he's gotten past Carlos as well. Daz Parker manages to get back ahead of Nokedli, having lost that position. So Beko up to P5 all of a sudden. And he's now chasing down Swinney for P4. And it's all of a sudden looking a little bit brighter for Beko. Because as Alejandro has a look at getting past Carlos into turn 1, because he does have Beko not too far in front. He will get past Swinney because of Swinney's 9 seconds of penalties, so that's 6 seconds more than Beko. Can Beko get a podium here? Probably not. Oh no! Swinney's in the wall. He's taken out Beko as a result of that, and what was already a pretty wretched evening for Beko after the safety car cost him the lead. Well, it's now been ended by Swinney's mistake. And, well, it's been a pretty awful evening for Swinney too, to be very honest. That now promotes Alejandro up into P4 for Alpha Tauri. Carlos gets past Swinney, who has, I think, lost his front wing after those shenanigans. So into turn 10, the Mercedes gets in front. Alejandro actually... oh, no, he won't take a podium because he's 3.8 seconds back from Jack Bowie. That's unfortunate for him. Goodness me, how much crazier can this race get? Beko, the latest to retire from it. Swinney, will he have to pit? Surely he'll try and just take... Yeah, he will. He'll try and take this to the end, but he's had to go off at the final chicane, will Swinney. He will get a penalty as well. Another penalty from the stewards for that incident with Beko. Jay Hartnell has begun the final lap of the Grand Prix. What a race it's been from this man today. He's negotiated the slick conditions into the wet conditions perfectly in the Haas. And he's kept his nose clean as well. Hasn't picked up any penalties tonight, has Jay Hartnell in the Haas. And we've gone 6 races without any repeat winners so far. 6 different winners so far from the season. Kaizen was the latest of them at the Chinese Grand Prix. And, well, we haven't quite reached the 2012 levels of Formula 1, where there were 7 different winners in the first 7 races of the year. We've got pretty close to it, though. But in the 7th round of the season, we are about to have our first repeat winner of it. Jay Hartnell's performed brilliantly tonight. He took the opening race of the season at the Monaco Grand Prix, so you could say he's been due a victory since then, and he's about to get it. Jay Hartnell rounds the final corner, picks up a massive win in the context of the World Championship. He takes the victory in Canada. Mystery will finish second for Alfa Romeo. Jack Bowie in third behind him. And then Bahandro will not quite pick up a podium. Carlos in P5. Daz Parker finishes 6th. Nokedli in 7th. Cavolis ends up in P5 because of the penalties to the two Mercedes drivers ahead of him. Swinney in P9. That becomes P10 after his penalties are applied. Nivi up to P7 because he kept his nose clean. And Kaizen comes home behind them. So, what a race that was in Canada tonight. Becco, well, you got to feel sorry for him. A real shout out has to go to him because he looked certain to win this race before that happened. Before the safety car seemed to cost him. And then Swinney putting the final nail in the coffin, crashing into the wall and rebounding straight into the Ferrari. Really unfortunate for Becco, but Jay Hartnell, you can't fault his performance tonight. He was sensational and, well, negotiated, as I say, that safety car period and the transition from dry to wet perfectly did the Haas driver, and it is P1 for him tonight. So it is Jay Hartnell who picks up the Grand Prix victory tonight for the Haas team. It's Mystery in P2 for Alfa Romeo. He manages to pick up his 3rd podium finish of the season. Jack Bowie eventually taking 3rd for his 4th podium of the season. And Bahandro in P4. Cavolis P5. Carlos in P6 for Mercedes. Decent points for him after what was looking like a detrimental race for his championship hopes. Nivi P7, Daz Parker in 8th place, Nokedli 9th, Swinney in P10. Probably won't keep that because of the incident at the end with Becco, who he put out of the race. Kaizen in between them in P11, and Lorenzo Butzells and Squiddy Diddley joining Becco on the list of retirements from the Grand Prix, although Becco was classified at the end of the race. So that has been that for the 7th round of Season 7 in the Formula Racing League in Tier 2. What an absolutely fantastic Grand Prix that was. What a brilliant event. Becco's luck, well, it's got to take a turn at some point, surely, for him. He's had so much misfortune of late, but that first win simply will not materialise at the moment. Will it do so in the next round? Well, we'll see. That comes to you live from the Sakhir International Circuit in Bahrain next Tuesday night. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Have a great Christmas. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.